Hey, what's up, Eric? Quick demo video somewhat for your, this is a Jedi Killer variant made by Clint Morrison over at Solid Sabers. This wasn't really a commission for me. I didn't count it as a commission. There were some things behind this saber that were happening, and then I actually offered to take this and do this for free for you and fix it up. Um, I didn't know it at the time, but this had come to me back in March, made by Clint. I had agreed to do a chassis for you, so I went ahead and I did a custom chassis, sent this off to get installed. Was reached out to by Clint the other day, and then shortly after reached out to by you, just with some questions on the installability of this hilt, and then some things uh, about the chassis that I had made. So when yeah, so my ears had perked up first with the installability because when I first had this in my hand, I didn't see anything wrong with it. But then when it was mentioned that my chassis might be an issue too, I was just like, oh, okay, man, just send it to me. I'm happy to take a look at it and do it. So that's what I did. I actually got this in the mail yesterday. I was looking forward to this. I broke it all down, stripped it all, took everything out of here, and I just started fresh, right? I don't typically do repairs because um, I just don't trust electronics that have been put in by someone else or that are or just used in general. There's too many variables there, and then when it comes time for me to send this out, all of a sudden I'm responsible for everything in the Saber, and then I could be responsible for things that I have no idea on the condition of, right? So I just it's easier for me just to take everything out and start fresh. And so that's what I did, right? Took everything out. This guy has it just has a ton going on in it. This is a pretty complicated build, right? It's got four different accents going on. You've got this is a two-button setup, by the way. So you've got one switch here, which is a plunger switch, and then you have another plunger switch over here. The original switches were a little bit too big to fit under these greeblies, so what I did is I just used some low profile small brass tactile switches. I don't remember what the size is offhand, but they were almost the smallest that you could use, right? So I did that, put those in there. You've got an accent on each side, so you've got one pixel accent here and one pixel accent right here, right underneath each switch. There were wire channels cut into the Saber, but what I did just to make it easier for myself is I brought this out to the garage and I opened up those wire channels a little bit with my Dremel, just so I'd have plenty of room, just to make it easier, to make it easier on myself. So I opened up those wire channels. Also, where these pixel accents sit in the Saber underneath these greeblies right here, I flattened that out with my Dremel, and then I took a file, I flattened it some more. There was plenty of real estate to play with underneath this black shroud. I didn't want these pixels sitting on a curvature, so I went in there, flattened it down, gave it some room to sit, and they actually seat inside of these guys a little bit, if you can see that there, right? They seat inside to a certain degree. But the previous pixels in here were shorting out uh, on the aluminum core. So what I had to do, because these pixels are soldered from the bottom, I soldered them from the bottom, bring my wires straight out, and then I put a piece of electrical tape on the bottom so that they can sit on the core and not short out. And then also these particular pixels right here, they have they have two resistors on them. So what I do is I go around very carefully and I tape off the resistors. You're probably not going to be able to see that on camera. It's all black around there, right? Because I do use a little bit of electrical tape. Go around that pixel, tape all the resistors, all the metal components, so nothing gets shorted out. I did that on both of those, right? So we did that, put those switches in here. I did a little bit of file work and some Dremel work on the brass tactiles or the plunger switches so that everything sat flush. And we got that, right? Got that going. And I'm doing all this while I'm printing a chassis yesterday because the chassis that was in here was a little bit broken. Um, the top pedestal was completely broken off, and some other modifications had been done to it. I didn't feel like cleaning up, or I didn't necessarily agree with. So the easiest thing for me to do was just to print another one. I think the only change I made was I did put solid sabers on the other side of the chassis for Clint. and I'll show that to you here in a second, right? So we got those two switches in, and then there is an accent strip right here in this guy. It runs along right here, and I'll fire that up and you'll be able to see that. I did show you a short video, but for the purpose of this demo, we're going to fire this guy up again. That accent pixel was actually the one that was installed in there was from AliExpress, and I've got one right here because I bought a bunch of them. And it looks like this, right? I've got a love-hate relationship with these guys because although they're super cool, they're super finicky. The one that was in there had been cut, so there's 10 pixels on this strip. I think he had cut 3 of them off. The problem with that is if you cut these guys, they no longer work. I found that out the hard way. I had recently done a saber, I don't know, recently, maybe about a month and a half ago, for a guy named Eric on Facebook, where I tried to put this in the back of his chassis, but I only wanted 5 of the 10 pixels, right? So I cut it, wired this guy up, it didn't work. I went through about 10 of these guys, cutting them in different ways before I realized it wasn't me, it's the strip, right? It's the nature of this strip. It's not going to work if you cut it. So if you want to use these, you're going to have to figure out a way to fit all 10 of those pixels in whatever it is you're using them on. So I wanted those 10 pixels to fit in here, right? You could see that. I wanted it all had to fit in there. So what I did is I had to go inside on the core of this guy, and I had to open up that channel a bit for these strips because it had fit about 7 in there, and then there was no room. So I just went in with a Dremel real quick, opened up that channel so that I could fit 10. You're not going to see all 10 pixels, but like I said, this whole strip needs to be in there in order for this guy to function. So that's what I did there. Got that. You do have CCSabers LED pixels. Sorry. Once again, I'm using a new camera, so I'm trying something a little bit different. I'm trying to get away from my phone a little bit, so I'm going to be trying to like line stuff up for a little bit anyway. But you can see those CCSabers LED pixels in there, right? These are the long pin versions from Carl Chen, and then they have that clear cap that goes over them. So that's what I did in there. So now we've gone over 3 accents, right? We've got one here, we've got one here, you've got your 10 LED strip right here, and then your 4th accent is for your crystal chamber. This crystal chamber is super cool, right? It's right there, it's got a real quartz crystal in it. What I had done originally on the chassis that I made for this is that I had made a little pedestal in the chassis that came up a little bit similar to how I did for Benji or some other sabers that I do, and it will hold the pixel accent for you. And it fit right. I just didn't like it after I had talked to Clint and figured out how the saber came apart. So I could take the shroud out, I could take the crystal chamber out. Once I figured out that I could take the crystal chamber out, I went at it a completely different way. And plus, I wanted to get some work done while the chassis was printing. I didn't want to waste that time. So what I did is I put the accent right on the bottom of this crystal chamber. It's glued and it's adhered to the bottom of that, and it shines through right to the quartz crystal, and because of that, that quartz crystal just shines, right? It's super bright. So all 4 of those accents, right, these 2 on the switches, your pixel strip, and your accent for your crystal chamber, they all get wired together, and they're all wired independently of your blade. So there's 2 blade styles in your config, and I left that on your SD card. One is for your main blade, and then the other one is for all 4 of these accents. They act as one, but they're separate from the blade. So I hope that makes sense to you. That's what I chose to do there, right? Because I wanted them to act a little bit different, or at least have the opportunity to act different, depending on how you program it. I left the stock fonts on here, and then I put one font Exegol on here to showcase what the saber can do. That's the only blade styles that I mess with, and then other than that, on the stock fonts, all the pixel accents and your blade will be the same because that's how they come programmed, or it's the default programming when you pull it off the website, right? So that's what I did there. Now, when you want to get to everything, you just want to open up this handle. So we're going to open up this handle here, just untwist, take that out, and then here's your chassis. right? Hopefully you can see that and get it in the light. It does say solid sabers over here in Arabesh for Clint. Solo sabers over here for in Arabesh for me. You're running a 28mm speaker. This is a removable battery setup, so spring side here is going to be your negative, right? And then here's your board. So if you can see your board, hopefully that's coming through okay. Maybe. Well, there's your Proffie board, right? So everything's wired underneath. Obviously, you're not going to see any wires on top. This is an extremely tight press fit down into this shelf. It's not glued in any way. So when you want to get to your SD card, you're going to have to take your board and kind of pop it up like that. You don't have to take it completely out of the shelf, right? So the SD card is facing the back, so I would just take my hand, or I would take the board and just pop it up enough to get to your SD card, do what you need to do with your config, and then snap it back down into place. And that's how that works. Let's throw a battery in this guy since we talked about it so much. Oh, I want to say one more thing before I throw a battery in it. So you can see in the handle, I brought the battery all the way here to the threads so that you could have a removable battery. And then with the 28mm speaker, what I found when I screwed this in all the way, the mesh back here for your sound venting was just barely touching the speaker drum. So you get that just a little bit of sound distortion. I did not like that. So what I did was I came in here and I printed out this ring and then I glued it in place, right? As soon as this is screwed on, it looks like part of the saber. You probably never even know that I did that unless I pointed it out to you. But this ring is 0.18 inches wide. That was just enough room to back that piece of mesh off the speaker, and then I don't have any sound distortion. So that was probably the last bit of modifications that I did to this saber in order for everything to function properly. All right, so now we can throw a battery in. So we got this going. I'm going to go ahead and throw this handle on real quick. And then I just made a few animations for the secondary blade style so that you could see what was going on when it was off, right? So you got a nice scrolling effect. Sorry. You got a nice scrolling effect right here on your 10 LED strip. You've got those pixel accents on each of your switches firing up, and then you've got your crystal firing up too, right? So you can see all of those are wired together, and that's what they're doing. But then when you swing this on, now they're doing something different. Now that's a slow scroll, and then into a faster one. These are lighting up like they should, right? Now when you hit the auxiliary button, they flash. Crystal flashes, and then twist off. Just like that, and then it goes back to the animation. I'm going to throw a little test blade in here real quick. It takes a 1-inch diameter blade, although the blade socket's pretty tight. So my short blade fits in here, but my longer 28-inch test blade does not. No biggie, a little bit of sanding, you'll be right there. This is your blade retention right here. I'm not going to use that for the sake of this demo. I don't need it. All right, so we're just going to throw this guy in. Sometimes I do like to flip this on. That way when I'm putting the blade in, if it's so tight, I don't mash down on the pins, because as soon as it touches the pins, it lights the blade like that. Now, if you sand down your blade to the point that it slides in here easy enough, you don't have to do that. I can't feel when I'm engaging those pins, so I don't want to engage them and still keep cranking on the blade. That's not good, right? So now we've got our blade in. Everything's looking good. Super cool crystal chamber, right? Scrolling effects working good. you got battle mode. So when you hit the blade or the saber, it initiates blade lockup, and all of your LEDs and your accents will flash, right? If we could twist it, you could see them. Your crystal chamber. Blade lockup on your blade will be in the middle of your blade until you pull away from it. Just like that. This thing sounds gnarly. And we'll twist off, and then we'll hit auxiliary, and we'll go in just a stock sound font.
Team C.
Now, like I said, on the stock sound fonts, your accent pixels will match your blade. So if we just rotate this around, you know, that's what you got there.
Smooth Jedi.
I'll just do a few of these so you can see what I'm talking about.
Smooth gray.
Nice fire blade. Really kind of brings out the accents here, right? Super cool. And then if you went and you could, whoops. I meant to hit power. I get kind of confused on these, plunger switches, which is power and which is auxiliary, because I've only had it for less than a day, right? So we'll just put the battery back in.
Smooth fuzz.
Now, if you hold down the power, you want to hear that with the handle on. Then hold it down for a second and let go. Turns it off too, right? So yeah, that's your saber. Let me take this blade out real quick, and then we'll just go over taking everything back apart. So we'll take the blade out. We'll just come over here and unscrew the handle. And then you come in here from the positive side, which is by the speaker, and you can literally take this battery out with your finger, maybe. Yep, just like that. And yeah, that is your saber. Let me know if you got any questions. I will try to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this out in the mail to you today, because the post office here closes at noon, and I got some things to do, but I will definitely get this out to you in the mail by Monday. All right, thanks, buddy.